Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, on podcasts everywhere, on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and on www.talklawradio.com. You can find old episodes and new episodes by listening to 9:30 a.m. The Answer when I'm live on Saturdays at 11 o'clock in the morning. We've been talking about Christmas and the law today. Just got off the phone with attorney Alex Vollmer, who usually focuses on estate planning, probate, and gun trusts, especially regulated NFA items that need a gun trust. And he was answering the question about, would Santa Claus be prosecuted for trespass or burglary? Now we're going to go to a call with attorney Ava Louviere. She's going to talk to us about the court case involved in the miracle on 34th Street. Ava, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we're talking about Christmas and the law, and it made me remember the Santa Claus trial in the movie Miracle on 34th Street. Can you give us a rundown, a synopsis of what that case was all about?
Well, the big question was whether Mr. Kringle, who was the Kohl's department store Santa, whether Mr. Kringle was Santa. It kind of started with them questioning his mental capacity because he did, tell the world that he was Santa Claus, and it really started as like a guardianship proceeding. And then the district attorney actually kind of led the court to the question of whether Santa is actually real, just in general. And so that's really what the case was about.
Okay. So these touch on maybe a real legal issue if somebody was mentally incapacitated. But the question of whether Santa Claus exists would not really be a real question in a real courtroom, right?
Right. Absolutely not. And they even touched on that towards the end when the judge kind of gave his ruling. Susan, the main character, the main child in the movie, gave the judge a $1 bill. And in that $1 bill, it said, "In God we trust." This is our, as it still says on our dollar bills today. Mm-hmm. And the judge said that, whether or not God exists or Santa exists, that is not for the court to decide, but the fact that the court put trust in God without requiring there to be proof of the existence of God, that was allowing him as a judge to say, I can't not say that Santa exists. So I'm going to believe that Kris Kringle is Santa Claus.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad that you were able to share that with us today on the air. Thank you so much for the call.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye. Okay, so that was really interesting. I haven't seen that movie in a very long time, so I was asking around the office who would be an expert that I could call to talk about Miracle on 34th Street, and Ava said that she could. She's familiar with the movie because she has a young son who probably watched it recently, and I just didn't remember that ruling there. And I think it's just wonderful that the message that was sent there, that the court didn't have to decide whether God exists for us to put trust in him. That's just awesome. Okay, well, there's some other interactions where Christmas comes in contact with the law. And you might remember back in the 80s, there were some court cases that went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court to decide whether government buildings could have a nativity scene in front of them. And so what these court cases talk about is the constitutionality of a seasonal holiday display that usually includes a manger scene, which is the nativity scene, or creche on government property. Now, I didn't know what that word meant, creche, so I had to look it up, and it just means the same thing as a nativity scene, so I'm not going to use that word because I think it's archaic. And there were various government offices across the country that used the nativity scene to celebrate Christmas. So let's talk about the case of Donnelly. Daniel Donnelly was the plaintiff, and this happened in Rhode Island, the city of Pawtucket. And what happened was the city of Pawtucket erected a Christmas display located in the city's shopping district. The display included objects such as a Santa Claus house, a Christmas tree, a banner reading season's greetings, and a nativity scene. And that had been going on for 40 years before Donnelly brought this lawsuit. So the issue is, did the inclusion of a nativity scene in the city's display violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment? So you're probably wondering, what is the Establishment Clause? So I'll tell you. The Establishment Clause is the clause in the First Amendment of the Constitution that prohibits the establishment of religion by Congress. Okay, so let me go back in my notes here to tell you who won. In a 5-4 decision, the court held that, notwithstanding the religious significance of the creche, the city had not violated the Establishment Clause. Well, I said I wasn't going to use that word again, but I did. It's the nativity scene. Why did the court find that even though there was a nativity scene, it wasn't deemed to be establishment of religion? Well, they said the court found the display, viewed in the context of the holiday season, was not a purposeful effort to advocate a particular religious message. The court found that the display merely depicted the historical origins of the holiday and had legitimate secular purposes. The court held that the symbols posed no danger of establishing a state church and that it was far too late in the day to impose the reading of the Establishment Clause in that way. Because it wasn't just the nativity scene with the manger, it was other things too that had secular purpose, like Santa Claus in the house. So it was not impermissibly advancing religion. It didn't create an excessive entanglement between religion and government. They said the display was sponsored by the city to celebrate the holiday, recognized by Congress, and a national tradition, and to depict the origins of that holiday. Those were secular purposes. Whatever benefit to one faith or religion or to all religions, inclusion of the nativity scene in the display effect is indirect, remote, and incidental, and is no more an advancement or endorsement of religion than the congressional and executive recognition of the origins of Christmas, or the exhibition of religious paintings in governmentally supported museums. The court said it was unable to discern a greater aid to religion from the inclusion of the nativity scene than from the substantial benefits previously held not to violate the Establishment Clause. As to administrative entanglement, there was no evidence of contact with church authorities concerning the content or design of the exhibition prior to or since the city's purchase of the nativity scene. No expenditures for maintenance of it have been necessary, and since the city owns it now, which it was valued at $200, the tangible material it contributes was de minimis, which means not very much. Political divisiveness alone cannot serve to invalidate otherwise permissible conduct, and in any event, apart from the instant litigation, there was no evidence of political friction or divisiveness over the nativity scene in the 40-year history of the city's Christmas celebration. So there you have it. That's why the Supreme Court ruled that a city could have a nativity scene in its front yard. So if you're just now joining us, we're talking about Christmas and the law and the Supreme Court case which was interpreting the First Amendment to the Constitution to decide whether a nativity scene in front of a governmental building is the establishment of religion, quote unquote. So we're going to be talking about other court cases after we take a break. We'll talk about year-end giving and some tips in taking care of older people. Remembering my mom today. This is the first Christmas I'm having to spend without her. Have to take a break, so stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.